Does learning fluent Chinese just feel impossible to you? No matter how much effort you put in, it just never clicks, and maybe it never will. 你看着汉字就像在看一堆乱七八糟的符号一样，老是忘词，反反复复的背了，然后又忘了。一开口说话，声调就让你脑袋一片空白，然后更烦的是，每个人都告诉你不同的方法，让你根本不知道下一步该怎么办。You know, after a decade of learning and teaching this language, I can tell you that none of this is your fault. And Chinese is not hard because it's Chinese. It's hard because you're missing 6 pieces of knowledge that make everything else just sort of fall into place. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what those 6 pieces are, why almost every learner is missing them, and how to fix each one so that learning Chinese no longer feels impossible. But first, let me ask you this. What if the overwhelm that you sometimes feel, maybe feeling right now, isn't because Chinese is too difficult, but because you've been approaching it completely backwards? So let's start by identifying those 6 major problems that make Chinese feel impossible. Each of these compounds that sense of confusion, failure, and overwhelm that you are probably experiencing right now or have experienced at some point in the recent past. So problem number 1 is that characters feel like random squiggles. So here's something interesting. You can remember that co-worker's face and name from 10 years ago, but you forget a Chinese character you studied yesterday. You sit there staring at a character like 学, trying to memorize that this somehow means study or learn, but in your mind, you only see squiggles. This is one of the first problems that Chinese learners run into, that feeling that characters just feel like random squiggles without meaning. You're told to brute force thousands of these abstract symbols into your memory. Write them over and over until your hand cramps. Repeat them until they stick. But in reality, your brain isn't designed to remember abstract symbols. It's very good at remembering people, places, and locations. And that's why you can forget a character you learned yesterday, but you'll rarely forget the face of someone you met years ago, or where you met them, or what happened in that movie you watched a couple of weeks ago. And the second problem I see a lot is that people don't know how to effectively learn the thousands of words essential for fluency. You learn 电脑, computer one day, 蝴蝶, butterfly the next, and some random idiom you heard in a podcast. You're not sure which ones matter the most. You keep kind of forgetting the same words over and over again. There's no system, no priority order. You don't know which words you'll use in conversations versus which words you'll never use. And so you end up in this endless cycle, learning, forgetting, relearning, forgetting again. And after months of this, you still can't have a basic conversation. And don't worry, I'll show you exactly how to solve this very common problem in just a sec. And this third problem has made a ton of people quit Chinese completely. You practice saying 熊猫 for weeks, but when you finally use it, people think you said 胸毛, chest hair. The problem is tones can be kind of embarrassing when you use them wrong. At the very least, they cause confusion and make it way harder for people to understand you. One mistake and you're misunderstood or embarrassed. So you avoid speaking altogether because the fear of embarrassment becomes stronger than your desire to actually communicate. So the fourth problem is that grammar feels confusing, like a puzzle with missing pieces or with random pieces seemingly from other puzzles thrown in. And the more you try to learn it consciously, the more confusing it gets. Chinese grammar is quite different from English. So instead of conjugating verbs like I went, he goes, etc., Chinese adds characters in, like these ones, to express changes in intent. So you can try to memorize the rules for these grammatical characters all day if you like, but it won't mean you'll actually be able to use them fluently in conversation. It's kind of like memorizing that salt makes food taste better, sugar makes it sweet, heat cooks it, but not knowing when to add what or how much. You have the ingredients, but no recipe. And when you see how different Chinese word order is for longer sentences, it can also get a little bit intimidating, right? I eat breakfast at 7 a.m. every day. In Chinese is I every day, 7 a.m. eat breakfast. And that huge difference is kind of scary to your conscious mind. Now, the next problem is one of the most frustrating because it's probably common advice you've heard before. Everyone says, immerse yourself. What if you don't understand anything? Input just becomes noise, not learning. So you catch maybe one word every 10 seconds and you have no idea what's happening. So immersion becomes this frustrating experience where you feel stupid instead of accomplish instead of having fun. Or on the other side of the spectrum, you're at a higher level and you understand what's going on, but new words that you hear don't pop up often enough for you to actually remember them from immersion alone. And again, you don't know how to improve the situation. You just listen more. Maybe there's more to it than that. And finally, the last problem I see all the time that causes learners to think that Chinese is impossible is that learners are unable to find the time and motivation to invest in their Chinese skill consistently. They jump from method to method, never sticking with anything long enough to see real results and build momentum. They start out excited. Maybe they download an app, they binge some YouTube videos, they buy a textbook, but within a week or two, life gets busy, the motivation fades, and they fall off again and again. At that point, the guilt can set in, right? They think that, why can't I just stick with this? Or maybe I'm not disciplined enough or not smart enough. Now, here's what all 6 of these problems have in common. And this is the deeper issue I promised to share with you earlier. They all come down to one thing, not a lack of talent, not a lack of motivation, but simply a lack of knowledge in 3 specific areas. 1, you don't know what to do. 2, you don't know how to do it. And 3, you don't know how to do it consistently, even if life gets busy, which it inevitably will. So without these 3 pillars, it will always feel like you're failing, even when you're trying really hard. Guesswork is exhausting, okay? It creates stress, doubt, and burnout, and it wastes your time. But once you get clear on what to do, how to do it, and how to stay on track, everything changes. Now, my Chinese is not perfect, but I'm not stressed about it. I don't feel overwhelmed or confused. The reason is simple. I know exactly what to do to improve. I just have other priorities right now. And that's the difference between someone who has the knowledge and someone who doesn't. One person feels confident and in control, and the other feels lost and frustrated. So I'm going to give you that knowledge right now. I'm going to show you exactly what to do for each of those 6 problems. And if you want a complete system for this, one that's helped thousands of people go from overwhelmed to confident in Chinese, there's a link in the description to get started with our free courses and community. So here's exactly what to do instead. 6 solutions that address each problem that I just laid out for you. So to help characters stop looking like random squiggles, you don't need to memorize them through mindless repetition. The solution is to use what we call the Hanzi movie method, where you create vivid stories in your mind, movie scenes if you like, to make characters unforgettable. This memory technique lets you tie abstract information like the character components, the pinyin pronunciations, the tone, to people, places, objects, and actions that you already know well. And this works because that's what the human brain is designed to remember. So for example, take a character like xue for study. Instead of just staring at the squiggles, you break it into components. You see a child at the bottom, and a roof on top, and a squished version of the Chinese character for small on top of that. And you link real objects or people or animals to those components, and you imagine them. So Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones is representative of the small component. He's jumping on a floating roof in your kitchen, and he's passionately trying to teach your nephew, who represents the child component, wartime strategy. So as well as the character components, getting these movie props to represent them, the kitchen represents the second tone, the building you're in represents the pinyin final. You can also bring in actors that represent the pinyin initial, and what they do represents the meaning of the character. So when you learn xue, you're not just memorizing strokes, you're encoding the pronunciation, the tone, the meaning, and the visual layout all in one memorable scene. And this is not anything new. It's a proven technique used by memory athletes all over the world. We've just adapted it for Chinese characters, that's all. And you can literally use it to learn 100 characters a day if you wanted to. Next, to solve one of the most common Chinese learning problems, wasting time practicing random words, here's what to do. The most common 1,000 Chinese words cover about 80% of everyday conversation. Start with these words first and then use mnemonic associations to lock these words into your long-term memory fast. Mnemonics are mental connections between new information and your existing knowledge that create lasting memories of something literally seconds. So for example, when you learn compound words like 电脑, computer, create that quick visual link. Maybe you imagine a computer connected to an actual brain, powering it with electricity, since 电 means electric and 脑 means brain. So for pure sound or spelling associations, if you're learning 苹果, you might think 苹果sounds like ping pong ball hitting a guitar. Sounds silly, but it works. Your brain remembers these connections way better than the abstract ones. Now, to solve any fears that you have with tones, stop practicing isolated tones with drills. Instead, practice tones inside full phrases and sentences, just like natives do. For example, you've probably heard the ma practice. The problem is that real Chinese doesn't sound like that with individual tones. Tones actually blend together in groups, right? They have rhythm and flow. It's like trying to learn music by practicing individual notes instead of hearing and practicing entire melodies. So instead, find audio of native speakers saying complete sentences where you recognize at least 90%, ideally 98% or more of what they are saying. Play the sentences, pause them, repeat exactly what you heard. Focus on copying the entire sound of the phrase and sentence as one, not just getting each tone perfect. Do this daily for 10 to 15 minutes. When you practice 熊猫很可爱, pandas are cute, you're not thinking second tone, first tone, second tone, third tone, fourth tone. You're thinking the natural rhythm of how these tones flow together in actual speech. Now, this fourth solution goes against everything you've been told about learning grammar, I assume. So the first step towards making grammar feel less confusing and unstructured is to stop memorizing grammar rules. Absorb grammar naturally through repeated sentence patterns that you actually understand. So here's how this works. Instead of studying that le indicates completed action, you see hundreds of example sentences. 我吃了饭,我走了,买了车, etc. Your brain starts recognizing the pattern without conscious analysis, just like you did with your native language, right? So it's the same way you learned English, I assume. No one taught you the rule for when to use a versus an in English. You just heard a car and an apple thousands of times until it felt natural. Your brain figured out the pattern through lots of data gathered through exposure. Chinese grammar follows the same principle. Give your brain enough correct examples, and it will intuitively understand when something sounds right or when something sounds wrong. Next up, to solve the problem of not understanding the Chinese you're hearing, that's either because you don't know enough words or you haven't done enough listening to get used to the sounds of Chinese yet. Likely both, right? So many of my coaching clients try to watch Chinese movies, right, when they simply don't have enough vocabulary yet. The input becomes noise because the comprehension rate is just too low. So I'd recommend highly that you first build a base vocabulary of at least 1,000 words, maybe even a couple of thousand common words, as well as maybe a few hundred to 1,000 common characters using mnemonics and memory palaces. That will give you the foundation to be able to start to understand example sentences. Then read and listen to those sentences every day as much as you can. That should be more than enough to get to a very solid level of comprehension and eventually fluency if you practice with them enough. Gradually increase the amount of native content you consume along with the sentence audio as your skills progress. So you get used to how Chinese people really speak and really level up your listening, as well as developing a vast vocabulary, enough words to actually speak fluently later on. Now, all of these solutions only work if you solve one final problem. That problem is a lack of consistency and motivation. But let me be clear, motivation is not really your problem. You're not lazy, you're not undisciplined. In fact, most learners I talk to are highly driven in other areas of their life. They're working full-time jobs, developing careers, running businesses, raising families. The issue is not that they can't work hard, it's that they are trying to stay consistent inside a system that wasn't built for consistency. But here's what usually happens. You start a new app or a course or a textbook, right? You're motivated at first. It feels like this time might be different. But then you hit a wall. You get busy. You're not sure if what you're doing is even actually moving you towards your goal of fluency. And without clear feedback or a roadmap that's proven, the habit inevitably fades, right? You fall off, you feel guilty as a result, and now it's even harder to start again. So what's the fix? Well, the solution is to remove the need for motivation entirely and replace it with a structure that makes daily progress feel automatic. That means you always know exactly what to do next. Every session builds directly on the last. You're not relying on willpower. You're riding a system that already has momentum sort of baked into it. That's how our program is designed. You follow a clear path with measurable milestones and built-in motivation, because when you can see yourself improving week after week, you don't have to force it, right? You want to keep going. We also teach you how to design your environment for success, just like brushing your teeth doesn't really take a motivation, hopefully. Reviewing flashcards or listening to a sentence doesn't either, if it's part of your routine and you know it's going to get you great results. So if you click the link to sign up to our free course and community, you complete the initial Start Here course, just a few minutes long. Not only do you get access to a huge chunk of our paid curriculum for free, as well as our community, you also get 2 free courses, one of which is a 4-hour training all about habits. So go ahead and click the link to get started totally free. So now you know the 6 major problems that make Chinese feel impossible and how to fix each one with a smarter, faster approach, right? But here's the thing. Even with the right methods, most people still fail. Why? Because deep down, they're still stuck in the old mindset of study and struggle, right? Without even realizing it. So in the next video, I'll show you the real mindset shifts that separate stuck learners from ones who make insane progress. So once you see this, you'll never approach Chinese in the same way again. So go check it out.